Um, that a couple quick little projects, but I hope that you're kind of seeing when I'm presenting this the importance of approaching the wood with the tool properly. How easy does it look with that tool cutting? Everything should look pretty easy. Sometimes when you get home, it's not as easy as it looks. It does take practice. Um, I usually have a finished product in my mind before I even start turning it, so I know sort of what it's going to be. There's no surprises. Um, but the more you're on the lathe, the more you're using sharp tools, the more successful you're going to be with it. And I, it does take practice. I don't know if anybody just picked up a chisel and just, put out gallery work. It just doesn't happen. You gotta do the time, if you will. Um, for now till lunchtime, um, one thing I'd like to do, and I didn't do it all those 5 demos up north, is a little Acorn Box. And the reason I like this so much is the simplicity of chucking this. Okay, and it is a little lidded box, and they are cute little things. You can't put a whole lot of stuff in my boxes. Okay, they're not real big. I call them little treasure boxes. What can you put in them? Well, how about your grandchild's first tooth? You can play the tooth fairy. Or their first haircut and put their locks of hair in there. They're little treasure boxes. Do I do larger work? Yes, I do. Not during demonstrations. I can come in here with a block of wood and do a hollow vessel for you and have you all asleep by 11 o'clock, because I'm hollowing the thing out. I like to do a variety of things when I do presentations. And also what I want to do is spark and get your imagination going on things. None of these things did I get out of books. They were just using my imagination. What can I do? And does it have to look exactly like that? No. Use your imagination. Some of you may remember, if you saw me years and years ago, I turned what's called fly houses. And actually, that was my first real demonstration, was turning a fly house. I got invited to AAW's National Symposium to do one rotation. And that was my first real introduction to demonstrations. And I flew down to Texas to do that demonstration. I mean, I took my own lathe. I took everything with this thing. I even practiced at home and had somebody come over and watch me do the demonstration. You talk about being nervous. And I was nervous. But fortunately, my wife was with me and a friend and his wife. And I was up there doing this fly house, and I was telling the story of the fly house and the family of 5 flies, and these were for American flies, not other countries, and then the whole 9 yards. My friend, halfway through the demonstration, got up and walked out. And I'm standing up there presenting, and I don't know how many people were in the room. I was a nobody. Nobody knew who I was, let alone what the heck a fly house was. And he leaves. I said, oh, my God, I'm not doing something right here. And what he left for, he came back about 20 minutes later with the president of AAW. And I found out later, he went and found the president, brought him back. He says, hey, Charles, his name was Charles Alvis, the president. He says, Charles, you need to come see this guy. He is so full of crap. The story that went along with the fly house, it was natural edge, and I had a nice roof on there with ridges so the little flies could tan themselves on the roof and not slide off because of the ridges. The inside was all domed for a chandelier, had a cathedral ceiling in it. A 1/4-inch hole is what's proper for an American fly going in there. I had, out of the natural edge, I had a porch all the way around so they can have picnics and barbecues. And it fits a family of 5. On and on and on about this. And so the Charles liked it, and they gave me another demonstration. So that was my start to demonstrating wood turning, and just the rest is just history. But anyway, it's just using your imagination and having fun, say fun. So I'd like to do one of those, and I came up with this little guy, and I know these things are very small, but it's I don't know. It's probably going to be. I'll pass it around. That'll be easier.
Switch to it.
You switch to it? Okay. what we have is I got to thinking about this, making little war tops. So they're square, but they're spin tops. And playing around with pyrography, work on them, and getting a bunch of them and spinning them, watch them bounce off each other and playing around with them. So I'd like to do one of those fairly quickly. And the blank for that has already had the pyrography done before I even started. It's much easier that way instead of doing that little tiny in your pen slipping off it. And thirdly, there was a gentleman and a couple people next to him were interested in thread chasing. Does anybody have an interest other than those two or three? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm not gonna make anything with thread chasing today. Not because you raised your hand, but I brought a sample piece of how to learn how to do thread chasing, and PVC is a wonderful material for that. And it's cheap, and you can learn your skills of doing chasing threads on here before you get a nice piece of black wood or something else, and you'll gain your confidence with it. So those three things I'd like to do before 12 o'clock, and that's probably going to be pushing it. But how about we start with the Acorn Box, okay? I'll finish with the thread chasing. So we'll do the Acorn Box, spin top, and then the thread chasing. This afternoon, in case you're interested in what's going on this afternoon, I would like to do Brian's coffee scoop and also a rockabye box. After that, we'll see what time we have left for some of the other stuff, but that's pretty much going to take up the afternoon with those two projects. So as the day goes on, I try to get a little more advanced with the turning. I start with beginner, go to intermediate, and the Acorn to me would be intermediate, and do the advanced in the afternoon. Actually, thread chase is a little advanced too. Okay, somewhere inside this block of wood is an Acorn Box. I've end grained glued some Zerakote to some maple. And with that gluing process, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, what I do is I will make a 50-50 solution of regular yellow glue and water. I will glue both sides, just rub it on with my finger, let it dry just a little bit, and then I'll put full carpenter's glue, yellow glue on there, and I'll put this piece on and I'll twist, and all of a sudden it's going to grab. And there's no clamps used on this whatsoever. Now, they are flat surfaces. Okay? I just wait till it locks in, just set it down till it dries. So far, I've never had one come apart, and I use that process on some of my off-center boxes that I do.
Why do you make a mixture with water? What's the benefit?
What it does is soaks in the pores, because I have the end grain going up, and the end grain is like a straw. It just wants to suck it in. So it's sucking in the water and the glue, and it's actually sealing that end. So that when I put the glue on, it's not sucking it down anymore, and the glue is actually doing its job. And it works great. I learned it from a guy named Michael Hoslick. So I just chuck the maple up in the chuck here. Yeah, I use tight bond. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to round this into a cylinder with my smaller roughing gouge. Now, if I want to check to see if this is round, there's 3 ways I can do it. One, I can lay my tool shaft on here. If it bounces, I know it's not round. I can put my thumb in this direction and I can feel it. or I can turn the lathe off and look at it. I switch over to a parting tool, or I could use a spindle gouge. As I get closer to the chuck, I don't want that roughing gouge up there. Okay, now we have a cylinder. What I'm going to be doing is, somewhere in there is the lid. I'm going to be doing the shaping of the lid and hollowing of the lid. So the bottom of the lid is going to be on this end. And so that's what we're going to be shooting for. Now I am going to have to hollow this out a little bit for the lid. So I need to leave enough material on here so I don't get much chatter work with the hollowing. But I do want to try to finalize this shape here. Basically, I call this just a Hershey Kiss shape. Let's stop and take a look at it. There is nothing wrong at all with stopping the lathe and looking at your progress. I do it all the time. Okay, that shape looks pretty good. So while it's still got a little bit of meat here holding it on, I'm going to hollow out the lid. Zero. When it was running as fast as it can go, and I think the Powermatic goes up somewhere around 3,200. And I do that for smaller pieces. Larger pieces, I'll slow it down accordingly. If I were doing a 6-inch bowl, I would not be running at 3,200 RPM. It may be down to 1,800 RPM. I listen to the lathe, wood, and cut. I need to slow down accordingly or speed up accordingly. Okay, for hollowing this, I'm going to be going in, and I'm also going to be undercutting a little bit. So there's actually going to be an undercut with this tool. So I'm going to end up with a sharp edge here. This is kind of important for getting a good fit on my box. And as a rule of thumb, as far as setting my tool rest height, on my hollowing tools, I want the top of the cutter to be dead center. So that tool rest is a little high. Should work. I go in right at the center, grab onto it. I'm going to explain a little bit more later on today about safe hollowing. Does that block the camera? Okay. Probably could have left a little more wood up top and would have had less shadow. This Cerakote is really a hard wood. As far as depth goes here, I may be going in almost 3/8. Doesn't matter too much how deep you go. Right now I'm just getting rid of waste. I'm going to come back out about another 1/8 inch. But why I stopped is what I'm going to do is I'm going to start recessing this in a little bit. Okay, and that's going to give me a nice sharp edge here for getting that box lid fit that I'm after. My cuts get a little lighter. So I make that undercut. Again, I'm going to do the best I can with this tool to eliminate much sanding. Don't get tempted to put your finger in there to check to see if you have that recess cut, because that edge will slice you. So turn your lathe off to check, and it's pretty good. I can go in just a little bit further, but the finish I'm getting off the tool is going to eliminate almost all sanding. Now that very sharp edge, I'm just going to barely touch it with my tool. Okay, that's good for now. We'll go back to shaping the top here. Back to the spindle gouge. Again, keep that shape in your mind. You're after a Hershey kiss. Taking a little material off here so I have room to get my tool in. Before you get too far in there, you'll want to sand. Now when I make these at home for sale, what I'll do at this point is I'll go through all my grits, and I'll actually finish this whole thing inside now while it's on the lathe. But I'm not able to do that today, so I'm just going to hit it with some 220 and call it good. Yes.
Can you tell me the number
Sandpaper.
of the sandpaper you use?
Right now I'm using 220 grit, and I would go all the way through to 600. 220, 320, 400, and 600 is what I use. On these right here, I would either use oil or I would use just plain Renaissance wax and just buff it out. You could also use just lacquer and wax after it. A lot of options here on these little pieces. Any of the friction polishes work well. I'm not sanding the inside at all. Okay, that's pretty good. And just working up to the tip. Okay, with the calipers, I'm going to measure the inside, and we're going to turn a tenon on here so we can reverse turn the lid. When I set my calipers, I set them up a little bit large, not much. But what I want to do is I want to sneak up on a fit here. So we're just barely starting. Looks like I had a little chick in this block of wood here. I was wondering what the sound was. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little split out there. Okay, now we're going to do the Woodturner's Nightmare. Okay, what is the Woodturner's Nightmare?
One last turn.
Let's make that one last cut.
So sneaking a very light cut on this tenon.
Almost wasn't worth turning the lathe on for. Okay, so that gives me a nice tight fit, so I'm fairly secure that I can finish the top of this without having this piece fly off. And that's one of the things that's so neat about this little Acorn box, doing it this way. Everything is done all off of these blocks of wood. No extra blocks, no extra chucks, no nothing. So let's go ahead and see if we can clean up that end there and get rid of that split in the wood.
Now, turning on a Powermatic lathe today brings back some haunting memories for me. And the Acorn Box. I was down in Florida doing this demonstration, and it was really a beautiful day down there. And I finished the acorn, and everything was fine. I put the acorn on the end of the lathe over here while I was getting set up for another step, and they had the doors open. And what had happened was they left the doors open. I put the acorn there. A squirrel was outside eyeing it up. That squirrel ran down the aisle. True story. That squirrel ran down the aisle, ran up the leg of that Powermatic, grabbed that acorn, and skedaddled outside. It happened so quick it wasn't even funny.
I got a friend who wants you to buy.
I'll get to that in just a minute. So, you know, that having happened, I was a little upset. The attendees were really upset. They called the police. The police came, you know, saw a sample of what was stolen and what have you, and talked to a sketch artist. I said, I couldn't really tell you. The only thing I could tell you, the squirrel was wearing a mask. The reason I tell you that story just reminded me to be here on a Powermatic again. I was down at Aramont teaching, and they wanted me to do a presentation in the evening for all the other classes that were coming by. And they gave me like a half hour, so there wasn't a whole lot of time. So what can I do in a half hour? So I picked this little Acorn Box to do for them. And they're folks that probably will never turn a piece of wood in their lives. They were there studying other types of crafts. And so I had to come up with something. I came up with the acorn, and I came up with that story from Florida. And what I did before I even started the project, I had a little tiny mask I cut out of construction paper or felt or something. So when the box was finished, I put it in there, and I forget how we raffled it off or whatever. No money involved. So a lady had won it, and she opened it up, and to be surprised, she didn't know the mask was in there to go along with the squirrel story. But yeah, again, I like to have fun doing this stuff. So if it takes a little squirrel story, so be it. Okay, so we have a lid done.
That's the door.
It's just the lid. The squirrel wants the whole thing. All right, so guess what? Since we made that tenon, that's actually going to be the top of the box. It already fits. So now I'm just going to get rid of some waste here and hollow that box out. Again, I'm going to be doing a cylinder here. Before I go too far, I got to determine where the bottom of this box is going to be so I know how far to hollow this out. Also remembering to leave enough wood on there so that there's not much vibration when hollowing it. There is a way you can cheat on this, and that's drill a hole. Here's something real important, folks. Even when you're doing the inside of the box,
What kind of tool are you using to hollow it? What kind of tool?
this is it's called an adjuster, and I'll be using it quite a bit this afternoon. It has a carbide cup cutter on the end of it, so when part of it gets dull, I just loosen it and rotate it to another sharp. Also, right here, I have a joint in it, which I can loosen this bolt, and I can articulate this cutter head to do hollow forms. I designed this about 2 years ago. It came on the market maybe about a year ago.
So it's a handmade that you don't get that commercially.
I do. Well, I have it produced by Hunter Tools, and they're up here. The Hunter Tools.
About a 3/16 diameter.
About 3/16 diameter cutter. He calls it a #1 cutter, so I can get into small areas. So they're up here if you want to check those out later. Now I lost track of what I was. Oh yeah, the reason I stopped, real important. Even though this is the inside of a box here, and you're not going to see it much or not, please do quality work on the inside. The last thing you want is for that squirrel to bring the box back and return it, because it's not quality work. All right, I'm just going to estimate the depth here. Wall thickness is up to you. I'm going approximately a 1/16 of an inch wall thickness. Don't get too happy in there. You want to check your depth. I got about another 1/4 inch to go. When I use the hollowing tool, and I'll be going in this in depth later on today, but I don't enter it with the cutter straight up and down. I roll that tool over, if you will, to about 7:30 on the clock. And I'll start my cut. As I start my cut, I listen and feel, and I'll roll that tool clockwise up to about 8 or 8:30. And I got all the control in the world I need on that. If I go in at 9 o'clock with that cutter straight up and down, it's going to grab. Now, I'm as deep as I'm going to go. I'm just cleaning up the cuts. The last thing I want is to have this piece returned. I was teaching a class down in North Carolina at John C. Campbell Folk School, and one of the projects for students was Acorn Boxes. And this one fellow was, we could also turn at night there on their own time. So the one fellow was making himself an acorn box, and I wanted him to work on shaping and also the correct fitness of the lids to the body and have everything portioned out correctly. So anyway, he's back there diligently working, and it was about 9:30 or so. I was walking through the shop, and he asked me to come on over and check his work. And he handed me his acorn box. And I looked at it and I said, I can't remember what his name is. Let's just say Jack. And I said, you really got a good proportion of that acorn box. Really looks good.
cuts looked good. It was sanded up nice. He goes, feel the lid, the tightness of the lid. And I took it off and it popped. And that's what I was after, a pop-top fit. I said, man, you got this thing nailed. You did a good job. And he was quite pleased with himself. And he says, feel the inside, feel the inside. So it was just big enough for me to get my pinky in there. So I jammed my pinky in there to feel the inside, and I pulled it out. He had the sharpest point, and the bottom of that thing actually drew blood. And he was so proud of himself with that point. I say no to nubs. Get on the bottom because I didn't want to go into sand in there. Okay, now before I take this and start shaping the outside, I'm actually undercutting this ever so slightly because I'm going to put this back on a jam chuck so that I can finish the bottom. So very lightly go in there and just undercut a little. That should be undercut. I'll make it still fits. Okay, we're good there. Got a little sharp edge on the inside for where that was. You can just cut that, smooth it out a little so there's no sharp edges. Okay. Now we're back to shaping the outside. The inside is complete. Make some room to get in there. And we will give the same treatment that we did with the before it gets too small, you can sand the outside of the box. Be careful with your sanding. When you're sanding up towards the very top of this, if you sand too much, you're not going to have a tight fit. And we just checked it a second ago and it had a good fit. You know what's going to happen when that squirrel's running down for its life, getting out of the shop, and that lid falls off because you don't have a tight fit. Now that's getting scary. We've been getting a lot of sightings. Same cut as we did with the lid. Measure the inside of your box and turn another tenon. Again, I sneak, a little heavy. Let's see here. I don't have this on my website. The zero coat for the lid is 1 inch thick, and the maple is 2.5 inches, and that gives plenty of room to do all the work. And it's about 1.5 inches square to start with. And there's more than enough room to get a tenant on here to finish it. We're almost done. You'll notice lathe to check the fits. If I don't, and I just put that on there, it's going to burn it. Okay, we are just started. And if it's really too tight, the wall is so thin you'll crack it. So you really just got to sneak up and get it right. I'm taking hardly anything off of this. I do hold on to this. And just sand it up all through your grits and put your finish on. And there you have a lid that doesn't fall off, nice pressure fit. I think a decent proportion between the lid and the body of the Acorn. Got that door open? A big squirrel? Here, let's give him a bigger one. Right. The same basic principles on this, except with the threads and sort of each acorn. If your shapes are different on them, and this is 20 threads per inch on this one. I think the gentleman was asking me about it. If you think about it, acorns are kind of like snowflakes. There's no two alike. Go pick up a half a dozen or a dozen off the ground, and then compare them. So yours don't have to be exactly the same. But it is a neat, fun little project, and they are cute, and they do sell pretty well. So the dark wood is zero coat. But you can use walnut. I like really hardwoods for the lids. They really take the edge nicely, and it will also compress the maple a little bit for that tight fit.
So how much should I pay you for them to
25. And that's, I won't say that, never mind. So that's the Acorn. Again, it took a little longer explaining the steps. Again, not a whole lot of waste. Finished, I sell them for 25. That one that he's got for him, probably 50. I usually sign it on the inside. Huh?
Under the rim?
Under the rim on that undercut, yeah. Depends, you know, the darker the wood, I'll use a black magic marker. Okay, I still want to do one of those little spin tops and get into thread chasing before the 12 o'clock bewitching hour here. So let's do the spin top real quick, and then I'll get into the thread chasing. Okay, a little block of wood's already got the pyrography done on it. So just like I did with a toothpick, I'm going to chamfer. And how many of you have a bunch of scrap wood laying around your shop? You don't know what to do with? Yeah, huh? So these little guys here and the toothpick and what have you, something to do with your scrap wood instead of burning it or throwing it away.
You're not helping my lumber sale.
But if you really want a nice one, I would use some hard rock maple. Does that help? I was talking to a lady out there. I thought she was going to buy the whole pile. I'm not going to mention her name. She might still do it. The stem on this is going to be probably about a 1/16 diameter. Full speed. Go in. This is a peeling cut with my skew. Now I'm going to work down and try to get into this wood burned area. Was that the squirrel? Nice practice for the skew here. I'm not sure if you can see on the screen, but that I still have to go a little bit deeper because I still have an area there that's not burnt. But there's no sanding involved on that surface coming off the skew. Okay, I did get past the burn spots, so we're good there. While I still have solidness on the bottom, we will do the sanding process. Sanding is done. Didn't take much on that little handle. I don't want to touch this because that's nice and clean. To make some room for my skew to get in here. Yeah, I start with the long point of the skew to get a nice crisp start to my cut. I'm going to take a look at the thickness that I have for the burned area, the square sides, if you will. It's looking pretty good. So this whole top, the only thing that was used is a skew on it, and I wasn't supposed to do that. No, that was my mistake. And I ended up not being able to get that last cut. So, you know, we're going to have to redo that. And still have time for threading. This is why for you that one will be 75 hours. That's why you bring an extra piece, just in case. What did I do wrong there? When I put that skew on there, I put too much pressure on there, and there wasn't enough holding it on. I should have gone for a lighter pressure on that. Now this time I don't have to do any explaining, since I've already explained it. And we'll get right back to where we were real quick.
So you want to do this in real time?
I'm going to do this one in real time. Unless Jerry asks a question. Yeah. Like, how much is this? All right. Sandpaper ready for the handle. Okay, I'm checking to make sure I got through the burn area. We did. Applying less pressure this time. I'll make enough room to get my skew in here. No pressure at all here with folks washing. Make sure you don't mess up. Just a tiny little bit of sanding on the bottom. Jerry, for an extra 100, you can have a set of these.
So what did he charge you last night?
I tell you, last night was rough. I ended up this morning I have to buy my Rolade off him. Look at this, the handout. I'm not even done sanding. He's got the handout. Yeah. There's Jerry's second finish one. I can't make any more of those. I don't have any more blanks. So, pardon me? Get yourself a paper plate and spin the both of them. Let them bounce off each other. I'm going at the same time. A lot of fun. Okay. I had a request for a little thread chasing. So I'm just going to play around a little bit with doing some outside and inside threads and what I do for practice on these things. I did not bring anything to make a finished threaded box today. Hey, take yourself a piece of scrap PVC. Chuck it up. Lock it in place. Okay, now PVC is not round. It's not true. So I'm going to have to prepare the surface for thread chasing. I just wanted to get it close there. I think I can get a little closer. I just cut this off on my bandsaw. Close enough, I think. First thing I want to do is I want to true up both the outside and the inside. This is going to be for the outside thread. So I'm just taking off enough to true up the outside. Also, the is not true. So we'll true up the face. For the outside threads, I'm just going to make a tenon on here, and I'm going to round the leading edge so my thread chaser has a place to start and not just grab on a sharp edge. So I'm rounding this. Also, I will need a recess here for a place for my thread chaser to go. The thing about PVC, it does ball up pretty quick, so be careful. You get nice white shavings. Okay, that is just a place for my thread chasers to go. Now, speed is going to be a factor with chasing threads. I have found anywhere from 150 to 300 RPM is a good place for threading. I'm going to go for like there's 250. See how that does. I have some one waves is my main lathes. Okay, what I'm after is to get a nice strike going, a pattern of the threads. To do that, I'm going to be starting with my thread chaser slightly angled. The teeth, the top of the teeth are down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up, and as I lift up, I'm going to roll this tool ever so slightly. And I'm just going to scratch this. I'm not worried about a thread. I'm trying to get a pattern going here. You can practice it before you even touch the material. Are you able to see what's going on the screen before I do this? Okay. As soon as, where's the, Jeff? As soon as I start this, black the screen. Okay. And if I come over and say, okay, then you put it back on, everything went right. Just trying to get the striking started, the pattern going. As soon as it's started, then I'll start with the first tooth, and I will come over one thread. Ever so slightly, just enough to get that first tooth started. The key to this is that first tooth is the only one that is sharp in both top and side. So what it's doing is it's cutting basically as a scraper, if you will, one thread at a time. And I'm going to scratch that all the way through the length of this tenon. Then I come back and I make it deeper to get the actual depth of the thread that I need. Once you have the strike and the pattern going here, you put that first tooth in, and it wants to pull you across. Okay, you can see I'm extending my pattern, and I'm starting to straighten the tool out. See how easy that looks? I'm not even sweating yet. What's that?
John will demonstrate this on our third Saturday mentor.
Excellent.
I'm not about to, I won't be here.
Okay, the pattern's all the way through. Now, I just go to the depth. And make it a straight threaded tenon. And again, like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with stopping your lathe and checking your progress. And right there we have a good set of threads on the outside. A lot of times what happens when doing that, you'll be cutting through here and all of a sudden there'll be a little squiggly, okay, a little off on the threads. And it's called a drunken thread, okay. It looks okay for most of it, and you get to that one part, and because you either moved a little faster or something. It's all the rhythm of getting yourself together with the rhythm of the lathe and the RPM and getting yourself in line with it. You got to move slowly. You can't just move fast. If you want to move fast, turn the lathe up to 500 RPM and try to chase a thread. Then you'll be moving faster. Give the time thread for the thread to cut through there. I know it looks easy, but it's like anything else. You need a lot of practice to get that. Now, I was teaching thread chasing in my shop at home, and two guys come down from Pittsburgh. Thread chasing. And the one guy brought his daughter, and they were practicing the thread chasing, and kept getting drunken threads. And finally, the father made a thread that was not drunken. And all this time, the daughter's just sitting there watching, never saying a word. She was sitting in the stool on the end of the lathe. She was probably 11, 12 years old at that time. He finally got a straight thread. She goes, Daddy, you got a sober thread. True story. Okay, do I have time for the inside? I've got 1 minute. Can you all hang in for just a couple minutes? We can be done with this thread chasing deal here. Okay, I'm setting this up so that I can straighten the inside wall now. And I gotta speed up a little bit. I'm hoping I have enough material left here to do it. Okay, also I'm going to round that leading edge so I can strike a thread. I'm going to go back to 250. Or thereabouts. If I did the outside threads at 250, that's when I want to do the insides because I've already sort of got the pattern going down. That's going to have to do is 251. Okay.
Do you demo on,
Pardon me?
do you do this, a demo on a robot lathe?
Yeah.
No speed indicator.
I just go by sight. Okay, here I use an arm brace. So my tool can hook in here. There's another way to do it, which I will explain after I'm done this. Okay, my tool rest is a little higher than normal, and the reason for that is I want my cutter to be above center. If you think about it, the thread chaser is a 1/4 inch thick. If I went on center or below center, then the bottom of this thread chaser is going to hit the threads that you're trying to create. So coming up higher and cutting off the top of the rotation solves that problem. I'm going to try to line my tool up so it's running parallel with the lathe bed. And I'm going to try to strike that thread. Once it is struck, then I will start straightening my tool out. I have found that the inside threads are a lot easier to do than the outside thread. That's just me.
Is that the normal sequence that you do the outside thread?
No, I usually do the inside first and then I fit the outside because it's a lot easier for me to take a little bit off the top.
I was being lazy. I just had my tool right there and ready to go, so I just did it. So it's basically the same process I'm going through with the inside as I did with the outside. I can feel the material getting a little thin now, doing both the same thing on both ends of it. And the plexiglass, when it gets that thin, will flex a little bit. I really don't want them to see this. You are not helping at all, Jack. And here this morning when I met him, I thought he was a nice guy. Go figure. Okay, pardon me?
What threads per inch are you doing?
I'm doing 16 threads per inch. PVC will hold both the 16 and the 20 nicely. Okay, they're feeling good. Okay, and there you have inside and outside threads. I could probably go a little deeper with the inside, but the pattern's good. Let me make one more cut. Yeah, if I go much thinner, it's gonna start warping on me. But there's no drunken threads. We've got nice clean cuts both inside and outside, and that is a down and dirty, quick little demonstration on how to cut threads. I will say, it's great when you get it, but it's practice, practice, practice. You have a question?
Is there a need to put a recess into the thread?
Yes, there is on the inside. Usually I'll have a recess there so that the tip of my tool falls in that recess. The reason I didn't put one in this one was because I didn't have much material. And I just sort of stopped and pulled it away. See, I didn't want that camera there. Okay. It depends on what type of box I'm making. But 9 times out of 10, if I were making a straight box like this, what I would do is I would come in here at an angle with my skew, and I'd just put a V-groove in there, and that's all you need for a recess.
Okay.
Now, they do sell recess tools, which I think are a waste of money, and it's got a little hook on it that comes back this way. It's about a 1/16 or whatever thickness, and you can make those up in your sleep out of an old joiner knife or something. Or just go in with a skew like that, and boom, you're done. You already got the tool. So let's say we take some lunch here. I'm sorry I got you 6 minutes overtime here. Jerry will compensate you for it. How long is lunch, Peter?